Well, my Lords, I think this has been a very interesting and informative debate. I thank the Noble Lady the Minister for her answers and for all the Noble Lords who have participated. I think to pick up some points from the Noble Lady the Minister, she suggested it's not difficult or time-consuming to vote, to register. However, perhaps this is not something that most people in your Lordship's House do very often, but moving house is, I think it's up there just below divorce and death in terms of people's level of stress. Moving house, which is something that many people in our society, particularly the younger and the poorer people do, find themselves doing regularly at 6 or 12-month intervals. And to say that we're going to make this extra thing that you have to remember when there's so many other things you're worrying about, it's not surprising that so many people, maybe when they're younger and the first time and the second time they move, they do it religiously, but by the time you get to the 6th or the 8th or the 10th time you've moved and you've got so many other things to worry about, it's really unsurprising. It is difficult to be mixed into that whole difficult experience. Now, also picking up the points from the Noble Lady the Minister, the idea that people own their own registration or that people could get accidentally registered when they shouldn't. Of course, automatic registration, the form this could very easily take, would be change your driving licence address box, are you eligible to vote, provide any extra information that might be needed. And I would have thought, I'll have to go away and look at this, but all the information you have to provide for a driver's licence I would have thought would be sufficient for voting, but I'll go away and look at that. And I think the Noble Lord Collins brought up an interesting point of the complications around EU citizens that we'll come to, but again that could be answered by a tick-tock box arrangement. Just to very briefly, I think there's one key point that's come out of this, particularly well highlighted by the Noble Lord Eatwall, but also by the Noble Lady Chakrabarti. This is a balance to voter ID. I don't agree with voter ID, but if you're going to have, as the Noble Lord Eatwall said, you have to turn up with your paperwork, and yet you are still told with your passport, no, you're not really a proper citizen because you haven't ticked a box on a website, is really going to create some real anger. And I think the points, I'm not sure the Noble Lady the Minister really addressed the points, important points made by the Noble Lady Baroness Whittaker, who is so often in your Lordship's House a champion for Gypsy, Roma and Traveller people, and also many other excluded groups in our society. For all kinds of reasons, it's so much more difficult for citizens we should be going to extraordinary efforts to make sure their voice is able to be heard. And I think the Noble Lord Scriven's point about the government's own impact assessment, if this is the aim of the bill, it's very hard to see why the government should not be taking these steps. And I will just make one other point also, that I did raise a question with the Noble Lady the Minister which wasn't answered, which was the question of whether the government is looking to make it easier to check if you are correctly registered. Because, maybe you moved 2 or 3 years ago in a mad flurry, maybe your relationship had just broken down and that's why you moved, and then there's an election coming and you think, did I register to vote or not in that difficult period? To actually have to then know what council you're in, find the council electoral services, send them an email or ring them up, and we all know what ringing a council up is like. Is the government doing anything to improve that? And if the Noble Lady the Minister can't answer that now, perhaps she could write to me about that. Perhaps if she could commit to that before I withdraw the amendment. Could she write to me about that? Okay, on that basis, I think from the discussion it's very obvious that this is something we are going to return to on report, but for the moment I beg leave to withdraw the amendment.